you guys won't laugh at me if I make mistakes, and I won't make mistakes. That's the way it's going to go. So, all right, I want to start out just with a question. Good evening, everybody. If everyone who's just joined us, sorry I haven't said hello yet. So we have this idea that's going to come in, right? Kama kama batel, or kama kama batil, depending on what you think the vowels are in Aramaic. But that's, as someone, before I even say, what is that principle? Someone just, what's the principle of kama kama batil? Yavni, go for it.
Things can be nullified. Things coming in a bit at a time can be nullified bit by bit, even independent of total.
Great. So what happens there? Give me like the scenario. Oh, Yavni, I can't hear you.
Something, let's say, no, I unmuted myself.
I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Something asul is dripping into something mutar, and each bit that drips in is small enough to be batel in the amount of heter, and therefore, like, each piece is batel, so we're less concerned about the total quantity that enters, although we might be still somewhat concerned depending on.
Great, good. We'll get into the whole debate in the Rishonim about that in a little bit. Good. Now I'm going to throw a little thing here. Let's take the principle of min matzat mino, right? We have a type of thing that finds itself. Now, Yavni, give me how kama kama batil is different if it's min b'mino versus min shebe'eno mino, with the principle in mind that min matzat mino.
If could you just state the question one more time? Yeah,
we have the principle that a mean finds itself, right? Yeah. This is, I think it's Aristotelian. I don't know, but I started physics with Galileo, so I have no clue what Aristotle actually said. But let's just pretend for the moment. We have min matzat mino. So now you have two cases. You have the min b'mino case, min b'she'eno mino case, with the principle of kama kama batil. How do those two things differ? Or maybe they don't. Start min b'mino.
So if it's min, if the isu and the heter, if the isu dripping into the heter is min b'mino, then right, if it's min b'mino, then the fact that min matzat mino is less concerning because it's getting mixed into the heter, and that's how it's being batel. Whereas if it's min b'she'eno mino, then it's more concerning because the mean, like the isul and the isul, which will find each other within the heter, can combine to be a problem.
Great, right? You drip. It could be. This is not saying this is the way it's going to play out, but you could imagine this, right? You drip wine into water, right? The wine is yain nesech, let's say, right? It's asur, right? Then the little drops of wine are going to find each other and build up, right? And then eventually have enough power to get rid of the heter of the water, right? But if it's min b'mino, you can even say that each drop finds the heter wine and combines with it potentially. Assuming, by the way, this all assumes, and this is actually a big thing that may come up later, of not today, but at some point in the next year, of is mean that's asur the same as mean that's mutar, that's the same mean or not, and so forth. But let's, for the moment, we're assuming that they are. Okay, good. I just wanted to start with that. Any follow-up thoughts or questions to that thought experiment I had? Does that make sense to people, what I was asking? Okay, I see some nods, so I'm going to assume that's right. And Rav Nachum hasn't yelled at me yet, so I'm assuming I'm at least somewhat making sense. Okay, good. With that, let's dive in. So we're going to start with the Mishnah on Amud Gimel, Amud Aleph in Avoda Zara. We have someone who wants to read. Good. Aaron, we'll start with Aaron.
Yeah,
you're good. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you at first, but you're good. Oh, and we're recording. Good, keep going.
Great. Okay. Yain nesach asur v'oser b'kolshu. Yain b'yayin v'mayim b'mayim b'kolshu. Yain b'mayim v'mayim b'yayin b'noten tam. Zerklal. Min b'mino b'mashu v'shelo b'mino b'noten ta'am.
Great. Explain now.
Translate or just summarize?
Either one.
What the Mishnah seems at first glance to be saying is if you have yain nesach that falls into yain mutar, any amount doesn't work, or it becomes trade. It seems like the opposite also might be true. Yain mutar that falls into yain nesach. And the same is true for mayim that is tameh, mayim that is tahor. And when you combine two substances,
What do you mean the amount doesn't work?
the amount doesn't matter.
B'mashu, right? You're understanding b'mashu as being amount is irrelevant. It's just any amount, right? Is that the way I'm understanding it?
Yeah. In other words, it becomes forbidden. Yeah. In any amount.
So
Yes.
But
But if you're combining wine and water, it doesn't become asur until there's ta'am.
great. And why is that? The Mishnah doesn't say. I just want you to speculate for a moment here.
I mean, I guess a formal answer would be the Mishnah seems to hold that min mino lo batel.
Good.
But you could say substantively, once I have min b'mino, I actually can't tell if it's no ten ta'am. I have no way of knowing exactly how much has fallen in.
Great.
Versus when it's two substances, I can sort of taste it.
I can't tell. Am I tasting? If I give it to a non-Jew, they can't say, oh, I taste yain nesach has overpowered the kosher wine or not, right? But you can do that with yain b'mayim and so forth. Just two more questions, if that's okay. Aaron, you're on the spot right now, so I'm going to keep you on the spot. Is first off, just remind us what kind of water are we talking about here that's asur? Rashi commented on this, so I think it's important.
That's a great question. So I'm going to read Rashi.
Please.
Mayim shnit naschu la'avodat kochavim naflu b'mayim deheter. Okay, so water that's been used for Avoda Zara.
Yeah. And if you think that's crazy, we're about to, in a few weeks, hit a chag where we do the same thing, right? Simchat Beit HaShoeva seems to be a festival of like, where we libate wine. Libate, is that a word? I don't know. But where we libate wine, we pour out wine, and thanks to Hashem, wine, sorry, water, good correction, which also, apparently the of Day Avoda Zara were doing that too. All right. Not, probably not on Sukkot, but at some point in time during the year. Good. And my final question, Aaron, since I've got you on the spot, Zeh HaKlal, right? Zeh HaKlal for what?
Not clear.
Good.
You could read it as Zeh HaKlal for yain and mayim, but it seems to be proposing a larger principle in line with a position we've already seen.
Good. Whose position is that? Just remind us.
Rabbi Yehuda.
Rabbi Yehuda, right? Good, right? So it could be, just to repeat what you're saying, this could be, Zeh HaKlal means for all cases of things that are menusach, right? Those have a rule that min b'mino is mashahu and min b'she'eno mino is b'noten tam, or it could be for everything in the world of things that are isur and heter combined together for all tarovot. This is the rule, right? We don't know, right? We'll see this later as a debate. Do you remember who the debate is?
In the Tosfot?
No, it's in the Gemara. It's on Ayin Gimel Amud Vet. It's anybody want to help Aaron out there? Who are the two sides on that?
Yochanan and Reish Lakish.
Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish on one side, and Rav and Shmuel on the other, right? So essentially, you have early Amoraim of Eretz Yisrael and early Amoraim of Bavel, kind of arguing with each other on this issue. So okay, good. Any other thoughts on the Mishnah before we move on? It's a good point, Yavni. Could be on Sukkot. It's the beginning of the rainy season, at least in Eretz Yisrael. Raphael, please. No. Oh, Raphael.
I had this thought because I know that most of the Rishonim seem to lean towards the fact that it's Mei Nesech, but it's not something that we think about that much. And my first thought was like we had in the Mishnah in Chulin, the Mishnah on noisin tam belefet, that this is more of a experiment thing. Yain b'mayim is like it's simply the opposite, like turning water into wine. It's like so the difference here, especially if you don't enter with Rav Dimi's reading of the Mishnah, the
Good.
question here is the question not of Maya de Isur, it's a question of water and Isur wine entering into water, or water entering into Isur wine, and how much you need to dilute it. Technically.
So, which is, we know is a common thing, right? That they did dilute their, or at least they seem to have diluted their wine, right? Whole thing in Psachim, right? Rebbe Yehuda in the Tosefta says, right, as long as it still has the Marev of Yain, right? So, which is really interesting, right? You could imagine that be another factor that comes in, by the way, is visual, which we don't see here. Just, I will flag that. Good. With that, we're going to take a detour for a few minutes before we jump into the Gemara, because I think this first Tosfot is just important in general in the world, and I get to teach the class, so I get to decide that. So Tosfot, Yain beyain umayim b'mayim b'mashehu. Someone want to read for us? But
I can read it.
Alish, please.
Okay, great. יין ביין ומים במים במשהו. ופרש רבינו תם דווקא יין נסך ממש שנתנסך לעבודת כוכבים הוא דהווה במשהו, אבל סתם יינם בשישים.
Good. Stop there for a second and explain.
Okay, so yain beyain, wine to wine, umayim b'mayim b'mashu. Okay, so Rabbeinu Tam explained that it's that it talks particularly about yain nesech mamash, the real yain nesech, which was used for idol worship, but it's not the case of stam yainam, the wine which apparently non-kosher wine at Rabbeinu's Tam times, which wasn't used for idol worship.
Well, he hasn't said that yet. He hasn't said that. You're just like stam yinam is.
You'll get there. Okay, stam yinam. Okay, vashishim. Okay, so stam yinam. Okay, good. So just something we know like wasn't used for idol worship, or it
Great.
wasn't used for idol worship. Okay.
Yeah, or we just know that a non-Jew had it. It's not known as an idol worship.
Okay. Okay. Exactly. So it's batel bashishim.
Good. Okay. Keep going.
וכן מגע עובד כוכבים במים, מיירי במים שידוע שנתנסחו לעבודת כוכבים, דאיסתא מים ליקה איסור, דקבתי, קטני, יין שידוע שנתנסח לעבודת כוכבים, אבל סתם ינם הווי בשישים, אפילו מין במינו, כמו כל איסורין שבתורה.
Beautiful. Explain now.
Okay. Okay. And also if an idol worshipper, I will translate it here, touches the water, so it teaches so the teaching is about the water that we know for sure that was used for avodat kochavim.
Yeah, I think Myra is speaking about or dealing with it. Would be teaching works also, but yeah, great.
Because if it's just a regular water, so there is no isur. There's no isur like this. There's no isur like this.
I think the like isur dikavate katani, like it we taught that yain that she had drew up nasech only when we knew that it was libated, right?
La'avodat kochavim. Okay, but stam yainam is bashishim in 60s. Even if it's bin mebino, stam yainam into kosher wine, like all the isurim which are in the Torah.
Good. I just want to pull that one out, right? Tosfot has just number one thrown us this kula here. They said this is only yain nesech, right? Which by the way, the Mishnah says yain nesech explicitly. Then it kind of drops the descriptor of the yain after that. But you could imagine it seems to be the whole Mishnah is about yain nesech. And so maybe it's a very good medakdek reading of the Mishnah, right? Only yain nesech is b'mashihu b'min b'mino, not stam yainam, and right, they've also don't worry about your water that's been touched by you can imagine this world, right? You can imagine a world where non-Jews touch your water. It's just like your wine, right? It might actually be a huge problem. And then they add in this rule which we haven't settled on, but right, that's aval stam minam have b'shishim afil min b'mino kimo kol isurin shebatorah, right? That's not Rebbe Yehuda, right, that we've seen here, and not a few things. You could read this whole sugya we're about to do as, right, this is, or the Zaklal as everything, and they're saying no, min b'mino in general is b'shishim and not b'mashahu. So, okay, a lot just in that piece of Tosfot.
In other words, is he reading this Mishnah as being in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda or as opposed to Rabbi Yehuda?
I think he's reading this as opposed to Rebbe Yehuda. He's saying it's only Yain Nesech that this Mishnah is talking about. And Rebbe Yehuda has his own opinion, right? That he has his own Zehaklal that involves everything, in Min B'mino, but this Mishnah is not Rebbe Yehuda. So it's a stam Mishnah. It's Rebbe Meir. We'll say that for the moment. You can't always say that, but I'll say it now. Good, Ruben.
So that might be irrelevant, but it's just for, at least it will help me conceptualize, like, how does it work with water? So we have like water of the Kochavim that, let's say, falls into a source. Does it mean the whole source now becomes Tameh? Because Min B'mino is not batel in this case? So like, how does it work? Is it specifically in the case where like water's in a bottle? Like, how does it work exactly?
Well, I think it would have to be, that it was, Mit Nasech, right? That's what they're saying. So it
Right. No, but I mean, assuming that it's Mit Nasech and then it falls into a source, does it mean that the whole source becomes Tameh? Like, how does it work?
I'm not going to necessarily answer the halacha. It seems to me, yeah, it can make it, all of it is problematic at this point.
Right, because it's no batel. Okay.
Yeah.
Min B'mino. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's no, I will just I will add, this is maybe like a little bit of a curveball. I can't remember who wrote it once. Someone asked a sheila about on Pesach. Well, wait a second, like, let's say my water source is a lake. Don't people like feed the ducks in the lake with breadcrumbs? And like, shouldn't I be worried of like on Pesach that there's chametz in my water? Like, chametz is not batel b'mashu. And it was a great, at the end of the tshuva, he says, look, there's mashu and there's like, we saw this. Did we see this last week in the Tosfot? There's like mashu mina mashu, right? It's like, it's miuta de miuta, right? I saw this somewhere recently. At some point, like if a little bit of my nesech falls into, a lake, I don't know. I don't think that the lake would necessarily be asur, but maybe.
If the priest consecrates the Pacific Ocean.
Oy, we're all, it's okay. That's salt water. We can deal with that. It's the I live by the Great Lakes. That's the problem. Your fresh water.
No, but then it's a sobeano. You can't enter in the Pacific
Can't
Ocean.
enter, yeah,
all the oceans in the world.
Hana derech achila, maybe. All right, good. But all right, let's keep going to the Tosfot though. Maybe great reading, Alice. Let's maybe we'll pick up someone else to read the second half of this Tosfot. I saw a hand before, someone who wanted to read Tosfot. So no. Otherwise, I'm going to volunteer somebody, and it's going to be Sarah. So,
okay, we're at Vehahi.
Yeah.
Vehahi de agardemim oved kochavim de ka'amar ala betosefta shetipat yain oseret b'mashu avagav delo have vadain esech. So, Joel help me look up the agardemium is like milashon agora, like Greek for a marketplace. So like it's like the person, the like market attendant guy. So the Tosefta has a case about it. The market attendant guy is an oved kochavim. And we say that if a drop of wine falls in and he's like presumably in contact with it, then that is oseret b'mashahu. Even though that drop of wine was not necessary, we don't know that it was used as a libation.
Yeah.
So it could be that the way we explain that Tosefta is just to say that we're going with Rabbi Yehuda, who says min b'mino lo ba'atil afilu b'shar yisurin, and that we apply that principle to kind of generally Surim.
Because it's Rabbi Yehuda, right? In other words,
because it's Rabbi Yehuda.
it's a lav dafka tosefta there. He's like, that's just the case. Another case of mima minova mashahu per Rebbe.
It's just right. In other words, that Tosefta isn't there to teach us some specific principle about wine. It's just illustrating what it means to apply Rebbe Yehuda broadly.
Exactly. Or Rebbe Yehuda is the author of that Tosefta, I'd even say,
Yeah,
right?
sure,
Sure.
sure.
This is very typical, right? That people I'm sure know this here, but I'll preach to the, is that, Tosfot, one of the things they like to do is when they set up an explanation is then bring a bunch of different places that seem to counter their explanation and then have to, explain them away. And that's what they're doing there. Okay, keep going.
Okay, ועוד אומר רי, דאפילו אם נפשך לומר דסתם יינן במשהו, אפילו הכי, הווה סתם יינן בזמן הזה, בשישים. ודווקא בימי התנאים והאמוראים, שהיו בקיאים לעבודי כוכבים בהיטב עבודת כוכבים, דאז שייך הניסוח. So, in other words, he's going to say, well, the Ri is saying that even if you want to say that Stam Yinam is Bimashahu, that's like the Stam Yinam of the time of the Gemara. But our Stam Yinam is different because in the time of the Gemara, they like really knew what was up with their Avoda Zara, and now not as much.
Yeah, you stop in the middle of the sentence. Keep going there.
Yeah, so it's because they knew, they were like so kind of focused on the details of their Avoda Zara that then we would have this extra chumrah to treat all wine that like a non-Jew has been in contact with as if it has actually been used as a libation. And that therefore then we treat it like for the question of bitul, we treat it in the same way that we treat other Yisurim.
I think he's talking about Stam Yinam Bisman Azeh, right?
Stam Yinam Bisman Azeh, we treat in this, we treat it just as if it's like any other kind of Yisur and not like some special hyper category of Yisur.
Great. Right. And so
what's the logic? What's the logic of his argument there? That because they're not baki'im, because they're not experts, we don't treat it, we don't lump it all together as stam yainam and
I think it's just that they don't do it as much.
No,
saying they don't do it as much.
Yeah, like in other words, when he's saying they're not baki'in in it, it's like they're not like a random.
Is that
like a general Roman is pouring out libations, but a general like French Catholic is not.
I was wondering if
less of it around, you're saying?
Yeah, or like it's only right. We might imagine a world where only the like priest is the guy who was we worry about like making Yenesach, and like the like sort of vintner next door isn't a threat. I think that's like part of what's going on here. And Yaakov Katz has like a whole book on this Tosfot where he basically says like a lot of this is about economic pressures.
But yeah, no, but I think also like Sarah, jumping off your point there, right? It might be like either it's like one is like Yeri Data Darot, they just don't know how to do Avoda Zara anymore. But I think like centralization might be going on there, right? It's like that it has to be done in a church, and therefore, just your random guy in the marketplace doesn't know how to do wine libations, or it doesn't even feel like you go for it.
He's not even doing it. Like right? Like I think, whereas like he's existing in this like French Catholic environment where like dafka one person is allowed to do the like wine rituals.
I wanted to put it into like, oh, go ahead. No,
I just wanted to say that we know from other places in the Tosfot, like Bechorot and other places, right, that they really don't treat Christianity the same way they treat like Greek or Roman religion.
Right. I wanted to put it into.
I guess the argument makes sense.
Yeah, I wanted to put it into the framework of suffix. In other words, that we have this concept of suffix, and maybe the reason that stam yinam would be treated like yain nesech is because we have a suffix. Maybe it was used for that. But when they don't even know how to do it well, they may, maybe a 1 in 100 knows how to do it well, but it's almost like a sfeika, because you have like, first of all, it's a suffix whether they even did yain nesech with this, and secondly, even if they did it, it's a suffix of whether they did it right. I mean, it's not exactly right, because this is going to be not really a sfeika. Why is that not really a sfeika? Joel, you know why? Why is that not a good sfeika?
Does it go the other way? You shall have to survive to think it through. Is that?
I think it's not a good sfeika because it's the same suffix. Is it
Yeah.
yain nesek or is it not yain nesek? In other
So-
words, in the end of the day, even if he did it, it's still just one suffix, whether he did it or he didn't. But whether he did it right is the same thing as whether he did it. But anyway, that's what I was thinking, that it's kind of like a sveka. That we're going to have, how much chashash do we have? Even if they do it, they probably didn't even do it right.
so-
But would it really matter if it did it right? They did it right or not? I mean, at the end of the day, if someone has a subjective intention of doing a Lashem Avoda Zara, who cares if he did it properly or not, right? That's not really relevant.
Well, it is. It could be relevant. It could be because if the head priest comes and says, "Sorry, you didn't do it right. You got to do it over again," then we go with him. We go with his psak. So in
So
other
it's some
words,
kind of a cross halachic comparison between religions. It's like if you don't respect the halakha of your local,
Yeah, you have to
cult,
know.
Therefore,
If
it's
you-
not Avoda Zara.
if you learn Hilchos Avoda Zara in the Rambam, he goes through it. He says, "This is the way they do this Avoda Zara, and this." And if you don't do it that way, then you didn't do it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I like-
follow the rules.
So I'll take a couple more comments and then we're going to move on to push on to the Gemara. So
maybe even the wording here of ki'in is actually like treating priesthood, like they're speaking about like in Tosfot for Tosfot they don't seem to understand the distinction between a layperson and a priest as something like, I don't know, existential. It's a bit like he is the true Christian, he's the one doing the nisuch, and all the shower of the people are there and they're spectators. Even though in the time of the Talmud they were so much smarter, everyone could have been his own priest. Like he could
yeah, or everyone had their own god, right? That they
yeah.
did their own, right? It's also possible. So, that's good. Any final comments before we move on to the Gemara? Okay, let's move on to the Gemara now. Oh yeah, sorry, Jacob, please. You're on mute though.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to recall things from my classics degree, and for different Roman parties, there were rituals around wine. So it was like everybody at a Roman party was doing a ritual that involved cups that had to do with the gods. So it was immersed, it was everybody, or at least all the upper class.
Yeah. So no, I mean, look, I have no doubt there could be reality. I mean, it's really not the Tosfot, it's the Tosfot saying, the Gemara knew what was going on in their day. We know what's going on in our day. They don't seem to match each other necessarily. Or it's the Ri who says that in particular, right? So it's good. All right. With that, let's jump into the Gemara. Since Jacob, you spoke last, you wanna take the Gemara? Go for it.
Sure. So ki ata Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hamara Yayin Nesach Mechavit Levor Afilu Kol Hayom Kulo Rishon Batel.
Great.
So when Rav Dimi came to Eretz Israel,
From Eretz Yisrael. He
from
came
Eretz Israel,
Yeah.
to Babel, he gave the statement of Rabbi Yochanan that one who pours libation wine from a barrel to a vat or pit of wine, even if it's pouring gradually throughout the whole day, it invalidates.
Let's be very particular about Rishon Batel, right?
Yeah. So one by one,
Yeah. I mean, look at Rashi's not, he's a little bit helpful. But yeah, let's it's like each individual, we could say drop, right?
yeah.
Each first drop, drop one by one is batel. You could also even imagine an extreme version of this, which is you have a continuous column being poured, but each, if you break down the column to micro splashes,
Yeah.
like that it I don't know if they're thinking that way. We'll definitely see that maybe later they're not, but
Right.
It's a possibility, right? This is, I don't know, I'm shocked by this statement. I don't know if everybody else is. I was the first time you read this, what? on the other hand, I don't know, it's just like saying that, like, yeah, each little bit can be broken down to like each piece contacts the heter. It's definitely batel because it's a drop by drop, and that's it, right? So Raphael, go for it.
Terminologically, only me'are is not drop by drop. Like me'irui is always like something continuous. at
Yeah,
some level.
and it's one continuous
Yeah.
kiluach, right? What's the, I don't know what the word kiluach is in English. What is a column of pour? I don't know.
Pouring,
Stream.
like it's a column of water. The Gemara even uses this language in the in a few short verses. Like it says imude, amude. It's like
Yeah.
we see it as a column of water.
So yeah, this is, by the way, just to remind us, I think it's good throughout this whole Gemara we should do this. Rav Dimi is whom? When's he living? Where is he from originally? Doesn't have to be you, Jacob. It can be anybody.
Yeah.
He's originally from Eretz.
I know
And
he's
he
actually
came to
originally
Babel.
from Bavel. Rav Dimi is originally from Bavel. He travels a lot back and forth,
Ah.
but he's a Babylonian, and he's third, fourth generation Amora, right? Versus Rabbi Yochanan is which generation?
First.
It depends how you count it.
Sure.
Second, actually. Rav and Shmuel are like the first generation. Essentially, he's second generation Amora, but he's in Eretz Yisrael, right? This is going to be important. I think I'm going to make a claim that this is somewhat important of who all these people are and who has kind of what authority in the sense. So, but I didn't make this up. The Tosfot is going to comment at some point about Ravine. So, okay, good. That's Rabbi Yochanan's statement. Sounds great, right? Sounds like, Ilana, sorry.
I just have one question. Is our understanding of Rav Dimi at this point that every drop that comes in as it becomes batel, it makes the heter, it like essentially becomes heter, so now there's even more heter to drown out every additional drop that comes in?
I'm that very well could be. I don't think we have to understand it that way, but I think you're right. It's like, you can
It's
imagine.
ambiguous. We're still saying it's ambiguous.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I don't know if I'm right about that, but I'm going to say it's ambiguous. It's a great question. And I think your point actually is, I'm so glad you made it because I didn't say this, is it increases the beetle power each time, right? Because now the Isser is combined with the heter and is like, you can imagine, I don't know, now I could drop in a whole barrel eventually by the end of the day of wine. And now it's still batel. So. Actually, that piece in Rashi is very important too. Alana, do you mind? Can you read the Rishon and Rashi? Just
yeah. Rishon shenafal batel beyayin kasher shebebor umutar b'hana'ah. So every little drop that fell becomes like nullified by the non yayin nesach, by the kosher wine that's in the pit. And therefore you can use it and you can benefit from it. It's mutar.
Yeah. But by the way, I just want to flag that Rashi for a second here. Mutar b'hana'ah. I wonder if he means ve'asur lishtot, right? It's a way to read the Rashi here, right? Because remember, we have two isurim going on with yain nesach. One is it's asur b'hana'ah, and one is it's asur b'shtiyah. And this, I only know this because I looked at the Meiri, and I don't know if he says this, he quotes this for Rashi, but there are people who read this entire thing of Rishon Batel as only talking about Isurei Hana'ah and not Isurei Chila or Shtia. So, but sorry to interrupt you like that. I just wanted to flag that.
No, that would be a way of containing how extreme this, or limiting how extreme this position seems. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Sarah and Ruben, I see your hands. We'll take you after Alana finishes the Rashi. So.
Right. The Haida Katani Lakama, the Aida Daladam Love, Yai Nesach Shenafal Babor Kulo Asur, Moki Lake, Shenafal Bechavit Gedola, Vinishbra, Venafal Kulo Kechad. So if we're going to say that this principle of Kama Batel, then we need to find a way of explaining what we see on the next staff, where we see, Yai Nesach falling into a bore, all that everything is Asur. The only way to explain that is to say that it's not coming in like, it's not Me'areh, it's like a dumping in a huge bit, like dumping in all at once rather than a steady stream or flow. And in that case, you can't say Kama Batel because it's a huge amount that's being poured in all at once.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I imagine like it falls in and it shatters kind of idea here.
Right.
But I mean, maybe it doesn't have to do that.
Something dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted drama in this piece, so I added it in my head. All right. We had Sarah, we had Ruben, and Sarah, go first.
So is there another example where we say something is batil for one isur and not another? just seems odd to say that like it's not
Oh.
there for the purposes of hana'ah, but it is there for the purposes of like
Yeah.
for the purposes of achila. So like I can understand why you want to limit the like this principle seems crazy, and if you're Rashi, you want to like harmonize things, so you want to make things like feel less crazy, right? And this is a kind of elegant way of doing that. Like I understand that as a sort of harmonizing approach, but then like conceptually, it doesn't make a lot of sense because when you're saying it's batel, you're saying it's as if it weren't there.
I think we say that for chametz on Pesach, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully, I know what right is that you can because that at least some people say right that you can have bitul b'shishim in terms of hana'ah, but in terms of achila you can't, right, for chametz b'Pesach. I think that's Rav Nachum. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember that. If not, when we get to Pesach time, 30 days ahead, and we all look at the laws, we'll remember. We'll see if I'm right or not. Yeah, I think there are cases where things can be, become batel in a way that they're mutar b'hana and not in achila.
And also the different sha'ot of the day on Erev Pesach, right? Like I seem to recall there's a sha'a where it's a sur b'hana'ah, but where it's still mutar b'hana'ah, but a sur b'achila, right? Like as you go through the 4th, 5th, 6 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. So that's also it's the Mishnah, the 2nd chapter. I can't remember right now, but as I said, 30 days before Pesach, we'll all know the rules again. And Reuven.
Well, I had a question similar to Sarah, but at this point, it seems to me at least that Rashi support the idea that every drop is adding to the heter, adding to the heter.
Where do you
right?
get that in the Rashi?
Well, from the last part of the Rashi, right? So if you have a whole kedera that falls in at once and explodes, so then like you can't just make the argument that it all becomes kosher, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if the idea is that each drop becomes a heter on its own, it's like why not also with the kedera, right? I mean, you have to understand that the kedera creates an amount that's too important to be batal the heter. However, each drop adds to the heter and like kind of like mivatal the other drops that comes in.
Great. I think that's part of this too is also the question of, is Rashi really imagining an explosion, or is he imagining me'areh, meaning that it's drop by drop? We haven't gotten yet. I mean, Rashi also knows how the Gemara continues, and we haven't gotten to the tzatzur, right? That seems to limit this case to maybe something smaller than a chavit. Right? It's going to be a really interesting question what's going on there. But that Rashi is about how much comes in at once, and a continuous stream. That's the word I'm looking for. A continuous stream is not what we're talking about. We're talking about drip by drip, and Rashi's nervous about so much here. I think is he's nervous about saying this is mutar b'achila. He's saying that this is that it's like, well, can I just do this? I can just like pour pork juice into my not that you should do it lechatchila, but I'm just like pouring pork juice into my soup for a while, and who cares? So, but
Rashi doesn't mention drop by drop. I mean, it doesn't say drop by drop anywhere. Like it could be that Rashi is talking about a continuous stream as well.
It does. The fact that he differentiates it with the chavit that falls in might mean, like the question then is, what is the line between those two cases, right? Is it that one is a drop by drop and one is just a continuous, flow, or is it that one is a column, but it's not like the entire barrel comes in at once, and that's a difference. Aaron, go for it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, maybe this is what you're saying with the second option there, right? That it's less a matter of the continuous stream, more a matter of the speed.
Good. Yeah. So
because
we saw that. Right? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, it just comes up in the Rishonim you sent out.
Yeah, and also, right, this cool question about time it takes to infect something with something, right? We saw back with the tipat chalav, right? Nafal basar in the Mishnah and Chulin, right? In Perikol basar, right? Again, there's a question that shows up in the Rishonim looking at it like, well, understanding that Mishnah of how long does it take to infect that piece versus the whole kedera and so forth, right? Is there like a time issue going on here? Good. All right, I want to move on in the Gemara. So I'm Jacob, let's have you read a little bit more, if that's okay, with the Tnan in the Gemara.
Yeah. Tnan yayin nesach asor v'oser b'chol shehu. My love dekanafil isura legav hetera. Lo dekanafil hetera legav isura.
Good. Explain. You don't have to translate words, just explain the challenge and the answer. So
it's asking So the assumption for what the Mishnah is talking about, like with libation being wine of libation being prohibited with any amount, it's assuming, well, it asks, like, isn't it that what's forbidden is falling into what's permitted? Then we're rejecting that and saying it's what's permitted is falling into what's prohibited. And this is specifically talking about the Mishnah, not necessarily talking about Rav Dimi.
Well, good. Yeah, exactly. It's talking about the Mishnah. So explain the Mishnah case now. If you're reading it in the light of Rav Dimi, right? How does the Mishnah case work? Right? Yain nesech oser b'chol shehu. How does that work? What's the case?
Well, then we're talking about so are we talking about when it's prohibited? No, his statement is not, yeah. So he has to be talking about permitted falling into prohibited when with his interpretation of the Mishnah, and then his statement has to be prohibited into permitted.
The Mishnah has to be. It has to be. Well, let me try and play that. Maybe this will help you. Right? You have, let's say you have like a barrel with a little bit of yain nesech at the bottom of it, right? And you didn't realize that, and you dump in. Well, you don't dump in. Dump is the wrong word. And you sit there and you're like, oh, I'm going to fill this barrel with some water, or even mutar wine. Let's say mutar wine. Let's stick with min b'mino for the moment. You stick it with mutar wine, and I'm pouring it into this barrel, and I don't realize that there's a little yain nesech at the bottom. Kama batil, right? It works actually, right? As each drop of permitted wine falls in to this yain nesech, right? It is, it's asur. And even though I overwhelm it, right? It's oser b'mashu. It doesn't matter if I overwhelm it with permitted wine. It's kama batil. Works for this really nicely. I can have a barrel full of that I poured in full kosher wine into this barrel all day, and because there was a little yain nesech sitting at the bottom there at the beginning, it's all asur, right? That's the case of the Mishnah. Right? That's how we have to read the Mishnah now. So
and contrast that with how we might have understood the Mishnah,
which is that you have a barrel that has some kosher wine in it, and you pour in some non-kosher wine, and even a little bit of that non-kosher wine makes the whole thing asur, right? He says, no. If you're pouring in non-kosher wine, kama batil, or rishon batil, right? That's okay. That can be, and depending on how we're going to read it, we haven't looked at the Tosfot yet. You could even imagine it could be majority yain nesech, but nonetheless, each drop was batil, and you have a majority yain nesech barrel, but it's kosher wine, right? And so the order is what matters here. All right, we haven't gotten to the Tosfot yet. Of course, is going to limit that case extremely. For the reason I think we all would be like, wait a second, you can have a majority non-kosher food that's kosher because you started out with a little bit of the bottom. Good. Let's keep going a little bit in the Gemara. So that's case one, challenge from our Mishnah. Keep going. Tashma. Oh, Jacob, I'm going to move it out. You read a lot and you did a great job. I want to not overwhelm you. We'll overwhelm someone else instead. Who hasn't read yet? Who wants to read? Let's see. Aaron, you haven't read yet.
I have read, but happy to.
Oh, you did? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. Ruben, you haven't read yet.
All right, sorry, I have terrible allergies, so if you don't understand what I'm saying, like ask me to repeat again. Great. All right, Tashma. So it's another objection. Yain b'mayim benoten tam. The Mishnah said that yain b'mayim, that if you have wine that falls into water, like it becomes also benoten tam. My love, they can feel chamra d'isura l'maya de'etera. So we have to consider a case that what? The chamra d'isura, the non-kosher wine, fell into maya de'etera, into like kosher water.
Exactly. Which is, by the way, that's how I read the Mishnah the first time. When yain b'mayim benoten tam, I was like, oh, you pour yain nesech into water, normal water. Keep going.
So that's sorry, that's supposed to be a challenge to our Rav Dimi saying.
Exactly. That's a kasha, because it sounds, what about kama batil? So what's the answer?
So answer lo, they can nafil chamra de etera lemaya de isura. So we're really talking about it, the Mishnah is talking about a case where the chamra de etera, where like kosher wine fell into forbidden water. And in this case, it's different. You can't apply the principle of kama kama batil, and therefore, like there is no question or up to me.
Great. So it's or even right, it could be kama kama batil, right? It's just that the heter is batil to the isur in some ways. Although we have to ask the question then benot and tam. So maybe if you put enough of it in there, then it you lose the principle, right? It's kind of an interesting question. If it is, do people get what I'm saying there? Is like if you say kama kama batil and you pour right kosher wine into non-kosher water, right? The Mishnah says it's benot and tam. So at some point, right, if it overwhelms the tam of the thing, it would be batel, the isur. And so it sounds like then kama kama batel may have a restriction there potentially of up until the case of not and tam, which I think is where the Tosfot is actually getting their thing at the end of the day.
Right, but that would be a question only in case of water, right? However, so there would be like a limitation to kama kama batel when it's min b'sheno mino. However,
Exactly.
when bina mino, there would be like no restriction to kama kama batel.
Potentially, yeah, that's potentially at this point. But sorry, Yavni looked at me like I said something crazy, and Alana, I think you did too. So I'm gonna call. Oh no, okay. Yeah, Yavni, what was
If Alana has something to say, she can go first. I'm just a little confused. I would have said that the right. Sorry. That they like fact that it's that we're saying min b'she'eno mino is benoten tam is like we need it to be benoten tam for the kama kama to work in a sense, like because like if we're saying it's b'mashu, then we don't have a way to start the kama kama batil because it's like even the first drop is not batil. That's what I thought it was.
good?
That's how I sort of understood the original objection from the Mishnah to Rabbi Yochanan.
Read the Rashi. It's teacher to the Hachi Garcian lo chamra de hetera bego maya de isura.
Sorry, which one?
La chamra de hetera bego maya or begav.
Okay.
Depending how it gets read.
בגו מאיה דאיסורא, ואשמעינן דכל כמה דיהווה מאיה תמה בחמרה, יתאסר עד שיבטל טעם היין את טעם המים, וכגון דנפיל כולי בחדה, דלא אפשר למאיה דאיסורא לבטיל.
Explain.
לא, חמרה דהתרא בגו מאיה דאיסורא. So we're saying no, it's that the chamra, that the wine that's falling in is the forbidden stuff or is the permitted stuff and the water. That's what we just read, and the whole kamra.
Right, the havi maya,
And as much as the water that's already there would
Mhm.
give flavor to the wine, then it would be forbidden until we had enough of the permitted wine, and then it would be permitted again.
Great, and except no, but Rashi, like I think he's nervous about that. So what does he say?
And then so he says, no, the case is that we're in the Mishnah, we're not talking about a process that happens over time. That's just in Rabbi Yochanan. In the Mishnah, it's talking about something that happens all at once.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think Rashi realizes that if it doesn't happen all at once, then as you pour the permitted wine into the water, it's kama kama batil, that the permitted thing is going to be batil to the mayim, each
Right.
drop, and you'll never actually have a heter. There's no way. So he has to say, so either you say that eventually it gets to a point where it's like it overwhelms the flavor and we undo the principle of kama kama batil, or the Rashi way of saying, no, it has to have fallen in all at once. Right. So, okay, good. Any other thoughts on that before we go on to the next? How are we doing on time? 2:53. Yeah, let's push on. Umi Deresha.
So the Gemara tries, I guess, to bring another argument against Rav Dimi. So Mideresha b'maya d'Isra, Stefanavi b'maya d'Isra. if the first part talks about Ma'ad Yisura, we could safely assume that the Seifa also talks about Ma'ad Yisura. And
Good.
therefore,
What's the ratio and what's the seifa here?
well, it's just that one sentence, right? Yain b'mayim, umayim b'yayin b'noten. So the ratio is
Exactly.
yain b'mayim, and the second one is mayim b'yayin. And therefore, that you see that there is like a contradiction with what Rav Dimi just said.
Beautiful. So how do we solve it?
No, really, like the comparison is not what you're saying. It's not that both waters are usher. It's basically that we're both cases are talking about an instance where the heter fell into the isur. And the Resha is talking about a case where the forbidden wine fell into the kosher water.
Other way. The ratio is the chamra de hetera l'maya de isura.
Sorry,
Right?
that the kosher wine fell into the forbidden water. Sepa de kanafil maya de hetera, and the Seifa is talking about a case where the permitted water fell into the forbidden wine, and therefore there is no you can't just bring that as an argument against Rav Dimi.
Great. Which, by the way, I think as a summary, Rav Dimi says this Mishnah, which says that there are cases where you pour one thing into another and you have a forbidden substance, can only be the case if it's the permitted thing being poured into the forbidden thing. Because if you go the other way, you're going to get this principle we have of Rishon Batel, and so it will end up being permitted at the end of the day.
Can I ask a
Right, so
question?
basically,
Yeah, Rav Nachum. Sorry, Rav Nachum first, and then
Yeah, because something bothering me, which is, first of all, is this Rav Dimi speaking, or is this the stam of the Gemara giving him a possible teretz?
I think it's a stam of the Gemara.
Yeah. So we don't know what we don't know what Rav Dimi actually would say about the Mishnah.
Yeah.
So let me point that out. And secondly, there's an obvious chiluk between what Rav Dimi said and this Tashma, this part of the Gemara.
Good.
And what is that chiluk?
Min b'mino versus min b'sheino mino, which you would imagine, that was my whole question in the beginning that I was trying to, I got it from you. I mean, Rav Nachum left me a very nice message this week, figured out that point. So I cheated. So
You didn't cheat, no. Yeah. So wait,
I mean,
you want to talk about that later? But
we
let me
only
just-
know that. Wait,
in other
we
words,
only
we could answer let me just spell out my question.
Yeah.
I could answer, Rav Nachum could answer for Rav Dimi and say, no, that's not a kasha on me because I was only talking about min b'mino. That's what Rav Yochanan was talking about, putting wine into wine. And you can't bring me a kasha from maybe the din by two different species goes by noten tam, because that's obvious. Because if it's two different species, just tell me if there's a taste. Only when it's the same species do I say kama bata.
good.
That's-
We'll take
Wait, but Yavni.
we'll take Yavni and then Aaron on that. Yeah, and then
I think you could say is it's not explicit in Rabbi Yochanan what was in the bowl. Could have been a bowl mayim. So maybe we need to cover both of the possibilities, and we have two parts of the Mishnah to cover both of the possibilities. Rashi said that it's a bowl shel yain, but we don't know that.
bor reiki mayim, right? The stambor has mayim in it for Yosef. Sorry, sorry, Rav Nachum. It was
It's possible, but right, I'm sticking with Rashi, but it's possible.
we'll take Aaron, and then I have a thought on it. Go for it, Aaron.
Oh, just based on the later reports about Rabbi Yochanan, it does seem like we know that they're both wine, right? If there's if someone has a relevant teaching about water falling in, but in support of Rav Nachum, not that Rav Nachum needs my support, but
Who says?
Great. It is much more intuitive that this would only apply min b'mino, insofar as if you're talking about wine falling into water. You can clearly see it, and so it requires it's assuming that the people who are reading the halacha at the time, think about legal fictions the way we think about legal fictions, and they say, oh, this purple water is just water, whereas with wine it is much more intuitive to say okay, there is a legal fiction, and I don't have to live with cognitive dissonance in the same way.
It's kind of the Tosfot of putting a vegetable in boiling water that we saw. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago, right? It's wait, you see it's boiling water. It's not, it doesn't exude flavor. We see it, right? It's good. We'll take one more comment, then I'll Ruben, and then my thought.
So I might be super off, and it might be totally a figment of my imagination. However, we saw other places that people used to water down their wine. So the explanation of it could be that like up to a certain extent, when you have wine and water that mixed in together, it still has the appellation of wine. And it's at the end of the day, it's not mean b'sheno mino, but it's still mean b'mino to a
It's-
certain extent. But that could be like totally wrong.
Mean shikarov limino or something like that. It would be. It's an interesting. I have to think about that. Here's Rav Nachum. I think this is what you're trying to push me to. I think Rav Dimi is talking about min b'mino, right? And I think the Stam wants to extend it. I think that for whatever reason, the Stam has some other tradition going on there that it wants to extend this to min b'shebeino mino for some reason. And by bringing that part of the Mishnah that's clearly min shebeino mino, it's saying that it's like, well, this principle seems to apply also. They. And so, I don't know why the Stam wants to do that. As I said, it could be they have another, Kabbalah from somewhere else that this goes further.
Or because the Stam, here's an idea. The Stam wants to go against the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda.
About
And if this Mishnah would really be making a distinction between min b'mino and min b'eino mino, then it would be like a support for Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Maybe the Stam is trying to say, no, we're going to distance ourselves as much as possible from Rabbi Yehuda. This Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda. It's saying it categorically for totally different reasons.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I really like that. It's but yeah, no, good. So all right, well, I want to the other thing I do want to bring in, because we're about to get into this, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and finish this, is that, and this is important, we're going to get three, at least it's three, maybe it's four people who bring traditions from Rabbi Yochanan on this topic. It's also important to remember that, as things travel from Eretz Yisrael, we trust some of these sources better than others. And this is going to be an issue with this too, is Ravine so reliable or not? Yes, thank you, Yavni. And who is the most reliable source in some ways coming from Eretz Yisrael? Who properly reports Rabbi Yochanan's opinion? And the Tosfot is themselves going to, they're going to bring some issues of well, Rabbi Yochanan seems to contradict himself in other places. So it's actually, we're getting kind of this game of telephone in some ways from Eretz Yisrael. And I checked, by the way, I believe that this sugya is not in the Yerushalmi. Not surprising, because it's people bringing reports from Eretz Yisrael, and the Yerushalmi on this Mishnah actually starts with the debate between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan on this issue. Okay, with that, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back. We'll finish the Gemara. We'll do at least a Tosfot, and hopefully maybe we'll do a little bit more too, God willing.
Joel, just a quick question. Are you still doing Wednesday's reviewing?
We're going to do Chazara once we start into the Shulchan Aruch. I was going to send out a doodle to figure out what time is good. And Rav Landis and I talked about, he wants to rejigger it a little bit too. So it's, to make it, he said the halachic takeaways. So, and I'm supposed to send him the stuff, and he's going to, stuff that you are likely to see on a Bechina kind of idea here. So
amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your email.
Thank you. Yeah. So
awesome.
All right, I will stay on, but I will let you go on break.
Also, one last question. You're in Ann Arbor, right?
I am. Yeah.
Perfect. I was in Detroit yesterday, and I'm Tachlis, we're so close from one another. I'm I should come visit you one of these days.
Let me send you my phone number later, and yeah, we should see each other actually. So it's
totally awesome.
Perfect.
Rav Joel. I mean, another way of putting my kasha is
Yeah.
once we've made this answer to the Tashma, deka nafil chamra tehetera l'mayad isura. But if that's the din, if that's the case, then the din shouldn't be tam, according to Rav Dimi. It
Yeah.
should be batil. It should be aser b'mashu.
Mhm.
So I don't see how that answer even helps us at all.
Interesting.
No,
Now I have
because
to
the
think about
answer
it.
says it should. Oh, this is talking about a case where it's the isser's on the bottom. Okay, the isser's on the bottom, so that should be aser. So it must be like somehow. What was the question? The question was it should have been mutter entirely.
Yeah.
It should have been mutter entirely. And said, no, it's on the bottom. And then we're going to end up with, there is still a distinction. If it's min ba'eno mino, then when the bottom is usser, it's usser not b'mashu, but b'natinas tam. And that's
Yeah.
just really convoluted. I mean, because like, if it's tam, that's the issue, then what do we care which one's on the bottom?
I know. Yeah. It's like some interesting version of Tata Gavar that's happening, but
It
not
is.
with,
It's literally Tata Gavar, but it's not the way we understand Tata Gavar.
yeah, it's not cooking here. It's it's but even with Tata Gavar, I was actually thinking about this, right? There is it the Rashba? Somebody gets says that only applies if if the thing that's Elyon is not rove, right? But if you have like a really big thing that you drop into a cold soup, that of course is not Tata Gavar. So
Totally different topic. It's about heat.
yeah, it's true. It's but it's a similar nervousness around when amounts overwhelm each other. You can't bring some of these principles in.
Right.
I mean, the thing I also did. Go ahead.
Is it possible that this? I agree with. I think the question is it possible that the Tashma? No, it doesn't seem like it. It's just trying. Like we've dealt with the beginning of the Mishnah in this way that we're saying we're like switching what our intuition is. So now we have to do it for the rest of it, just to make it consistent with what we've concluded about the Min B'Mino case.
I mean, I think it's the other. I think it's also a way of pointing out that this Mishnah doesn't work very well at all. Like they're using the entire Mishnah to counter to challenge Rav Dimi. The Rav Dimi doesn't work well with this Mishnah in general. It's, what we're doing with this Mishnah in the end, I can't tell you, but I mean, you can see it's. I mean, if you look in the Rambam, he essentially reads this Mishnah the way the Gemara is reading it, which is not surprising.
I would answer this Mishnah. If I could be the Gemara, I would say this Mishnah. I would say, never mind.
All right.
I was gonna say maybe you can't learn from this Mishnah anything other than wine and water.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's all right, with that, let's come back. I want to push on to Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef. So let's as people come back, Yavni, why don't you take over for us? Ki ata Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef.
כי אתה רב יצחק בר יוסף, אמר רבי יוחנן, המערה יין נסך מצרצור קטן לבור, אפילו כל היום כולו, ראשון בטל. ודווקא צרצור קטן, דלא נפיש עמודי. אבל חבית דנפיש עמודי, לא. Should I?
Yeah, translate, explain.
So Rav Yitzchak comes with a different version, a different account of what Rabbi Yochanan said, or a different statement that Rabbi Yochanan made.
By the way, before you get into it, who's Rav Yitzchak? When does he live? Where does he live?
I don't know.
He's also, I'll tell you, he's also third, fourth generation Amora Bavel, right? He's Rav. He's not Rabbi Yitzchak.
Right.
So he and Rav Dimi are contemporaries, essentially. But it is, I actually wanted to point this out with all this too. Rav Dimi, Rav Yitzchak, I think everyone here, until we get to Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, none of them learn directly with Rabbi Yochanan, right? They are all learning from people like Rabbi Abahu, Rabbi Zera, who are in Eretz Yisrael, who are students of Rabbi Yochanan's, but they're not, as far as I can tell, is like, I looked this up in those green books. I don't think any of them learn directly from Rabbi Yochanan. So they're getting a little bit of a, it's going through a few layers before it gets to them. So, okay. So what does he say? Give us explain his argument here, or his claim.
So if the libation wine is falling from a small container into the pit or vat, then even if it goes all day, I'm not sure the relevance of that. Then even if it's dripping all day or streaming all day, we have that bit by bit it is nullified.
Mm-hmm.
And davka from a small container, because then the column, the stream, it can't be too big.
Mm-hmm.
But from a barrel, that the column can be big, no.
Good. Where does Rav Yitzchak's statement end and the Gemara pick up?
I think Rav Yitzchak's statement ends at Rishon Batil.
I think so too, right? The language switches all of a sudden there. So yeah, great. So they're using this to do what to Rav Dimi?
To limit it to, yeah.
Even though he says chavit, right?
Right, he says chavit, and they're changing it to not a chavit. What?
Yeah, although I imagined when he pours from chavit, I imagine it wasn't like he pours all of it at once. I mean, he was pouring a small stream, here. So, yeah, Ruben, please.
So, quick question: is the chiddush here the amount that's being dropped in the bore, or is the chiddush here the stream that's dropping of the bore, right? Because there's different in stream between like a small container and a chavit, right?
Yeah, I think the sum of the amount is not important, right? They all agree that can be batel, but it's the rate at which it's pouring in is what they're interested in.
So why chavit katan, right? Why specifically katan? It's like there's a potential to be batel b'shishim, the whole thing, even if you drop it all at once together. That's how I at least understood it.
Oh, interesting. You think it's because it's small that it's always going to be batel as opposed to the rate. That's really interesting. I didn't think about that, Reed. I just want to restate that because it's a sur katan, although the Gemara says delo nafish amudei, right? It sounds like it's the amount that's going in at once at each time, and not right. It's about the size of the volume of the column, and not the total amount that sums over the day.
Right. We can imagine that the tzartzur is like a pitcher with a spout, and that it controls the size of the pouring, whereas a barrel has a wider mouth, and even if you're pouring it slowly, I don't know. I find it very difficult. I find it difficult. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Either way, it's a small amount going in slowly.
So, and that's, I think is it the Rambam? Somebody rules essentially they say chavit, but you pour it in small amounts or something like that. They actually kind of split the difference between the two of them in some ways. So Sarah, let's start with Sarah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to come up with an explanation of why that tzartzur is supposedly different. And it seems like one way to think about it is like sections of horizontal slices of the boor. So if you think about that first horizontal plane, if it's the tzartzur, it's a small circle of that horizontal plane. So then maybe that's like batel b'shishim or something. It's like batel in that horizontal plane. But if it's bigger, then it's not, because of that horizontal plane. If you just think about the contact points, right? That horizontal plane.
The layer
makes a lot of sense, but then it should matter how big the chavit is at the bottom.
Yeah.
How big, in other words, so just say it's all a question of ratios. And then why are we talking about what's the matter of which jar it is? Just say, as long as each momentary drop is less than a 60th.
Yeah.
Right, but I think because it's about the size of the column, which is what it seems like the size of vessel is a proxy for. Seems like what they're saying is it's got to be only a small portion of that kind of horizontal, like the circle that is the horizontal, like
The
face
cross
of
section
the
is what you wanna
column, the
put.
cross section of the
Yeah,
column. I don't know.
that's so nicely.
I could
that we-
draw this better than I can describe
Yeah.
it, but maybe that's what's
could-
going on.
You could imagine a boar has like a standard size, or maybe not standard, but a assumed size in their world.
Yeah, it has like a general, right, or just like a kind of order of magnitude guess.
Mhm.
I mean,
So,
I think that's a fascinating way to think about like how fluids work,
yeah.
right? That like what matters is what touches at the moment, as opposed to like volumes. Like that's a kind of bizarre.
So, this is
Way
I'll
of
go
thinking.
Yavni, and then I see Yavni, and then some other comments too on this.
Could the tool be actually, I know Ashley says it refers to the container, but could it actually be like there's a tap or something, as opposed to the chavit, where we're imagining like the whole thing is open, but it's just barely tipped over or something. So it's so we trust it less to be actually pouring so gradually, and we don't really know what happened all day.
But we have this right with tapping a chavit. It happens, right? This is in Sukkah, the whole thing, the whole psik reshe sugya, right? Talks about, is it in Sukkah or is it Shabbos, that sugya? There's several of those, but right, where you're afraid that if you like block it, you're going to squeeze, right, the material. It's going to be a psik reshe. And so they definitely were tapping barrels back in there in that world. So
I need to enter with
Oh.
etymology, because here chavit,
Please.
especially in Eretz Israeli mekorot, it's a kad. It's not a
Right.
big thing.
yeah,
It's very, very small. Tzartzor katan is like it's like a tea kettle or something, like it's very, or for lamps or something like that. And then you have chavit that's actually like a small container that actually has a bigger mouth. So
Yeah, but either
only
way-
b'tzartzor katan you say kama kama batim. But
Either
if
way,
it
we're
comes
not talking-
slightly bigger,
But if I take a big barrel and I pour it very, very slowly, I could get an amud that was just as narrow as the tzartzur.
yeah, that's exactly what I meant. The question isn't a suffix. It's like the question is the size of the amud that comes out of the mouth of something when I pour it in the way that I pour it. So it's all katan when I when I take a tea kettle and I simply like pour it, it makes a small amud.
No, but we had that question at the beginning. How could we potentially conceptualize a more non-kosher wine that becomes kosher because it got like poured into like a board of kosher wine, right? And I think Raphael's explanation kind of answers it. It only applies to smaller things that can't overpower the board. I mean, there can never be a situation where there is more non-kosher wine than kosher wine that's in the board.
so good. Aaron, we'll take all the comments, then we'll kind of come back here.
Just I on Ruben's last point, I think even with a chavit, you're never going to have probably a significant amount of wine relative to the size of the board. It seems like, and just given that right, they don't end up talking about the relative ratio of the cross section. It seems like it's sort of independent of the size of the bore. What matters is like if you like caught a little bit of the wine like in a cup, get in like a small time frame, like would you be like, that's a lot, that's a significant amount of wine. If you're pouring out of like a tea kettle, you get a little bit, you'd be like, oh, at any given moment, it's a tiny bit of wine out of a barrel, you would have like a glass of wine.
Right. I mean, Rav Nachum, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I have two comments besides, but really pressing me, which is one is that the Mishnah said that is asur mashu. So we're still going against the Mishnah, right? I mean, we're still changing up the Mishnah to be this weird reading that we ascribe to Rav Dimi, that it's only where the bottom is the Isser, and that it's the small. And when it says, I mean, by the way, just go back and read the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say with asur mashu? What it means is, just like Joel said, that there was a mashu in the barrel in the pit, and that mashu was asur, and now I slowly pour it in heter, and it ends up being a whole pit full of wine, and it's all asur because of the mashu at the bottom. And we're not steering clear from that interpretation from the Mishnah, even with this new answer.
Yeah.
That's one thing I want to say. That's the more interesting point I want to make. The second interesting insight that I have is, I just was looking at Steinsaltz, and he says Tzartzur is a bakbuk. And that made me think that what's the difference between pouring from a barrel and a bakbuk? If you take what? Go ahead. You know mechanics and physics.
It's drips versus columns is the difference.
Exactly. If you take a bottle and turn it upside down, it's a drop of a bunch of wine will come out, and then the air pressure will prevent it from, and then some air has to go in, and then it'll go boom, 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 boom. It'll come out in chugs and not in a flow. And maybe that's what he's saying. Maybe you can only differentiate the stream when it is physically differentiated.
So I want to say on this too, and Raphael, maybe this is what you were saying, and I want to make sure. So if I'm just repeating you, is that you could read this whole thing then if Rav Dimi comes to Bavel. He says, I have this statement for Rabbi Yochanan about chavit. In Eretz Yisrael, a chavit is a small thing that maybe even has a drip, 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 right? It's a small thing. In Bavel, they're big things. And they're like, so all these Babylonian Jews are like, oh, you could just dump in, from a chavit. And so Rav Yitzchak shows up and he's like, wait, no. When he said chavit, he meant an Eretz Yisrael chavit, which is sort of you guys, right? And they actually agreed. He's just limiting. He's like, you have to understand the statement in the place that it was made. So is that Raphael?
But then there's still not really much difference then. What is the difference between it being big and small? I mean, like we're saying, that the amount,
The size of the column.
the size of the column, but either way, if the principle is that it's batel as it goes in, drip by part, what does it matter how big the part is? As long as the part is enough to be batel in 60.
Yeah, because that's the whole question of what are this newly mudim of Rabbi Yochanan. Now, basically, what's happening is that we're trying to limit it. We say kama batil, it's like a big thing. Like you could make of it a brisker, like a mufshat thing that works every time and everywhere. And then come a lot of chachamim that say, no, it's not actually every kama. It's not like a drop thing as we imagined it. It's more of a chashivut thing. So when the column is big enough, so we can't actually say that kama batil because it has chashivus. It wasn't dropped at ender every time. It's like a big amud, a big column has some mamashut that doesn't cancel out immediately. So it might be added up.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can maybe even imagine it as something close to noten tam, or it's something that has mamshus. It's not significant, but it's even more than significant. It has reality. Like an amud, you can actually imagine it simply being swallowed into the water, a small amud. But if it's a big column of water,
yeah. No, I mean, there's also you imagine you see a little bit drop in, but it was a little bit. You can't really tell. Who cares? But if you actually poured it in and it was a significant amount, that could be a problematic thing. Good. Any other comments on that before we move on? Okay. All right. This is great. So now we're going to get to Ravine. Ravine, by the way, I'll just give it to you. Also, third, fourth generation Amora. This is Rabbi Avin, by the way. He actually has smicha in Eretz Yisrael. Might make a difference. So he has some maybe more authority than Rav Dimi and Rav Yitzchak do. So if you believe that the Eretz Yisrael smicha has more authority, that's a whole nother discussion. But all right, who wants to read? Ravine. Should I assign somebody? Alana, take it for us. Oh, I don't know if Alana heard me or not. Wait, you're on mute.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, but I'll read. Okay. Okay. Kiyata Ravin Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Yain nesach shenafal lavor v'nafal sham kiton shel mayim ro'ina teheter ki'ilu eno v'ashar mayim ravin alav u'mevatlin otel. So first of all, there's a funny pun on ravin here. This is his shita, and he uses that term. Okay. But okay, so in two meanings, but the idea being, okay, so this is similar to a shita I think we saw attributed to Rava before last week, I think, where you have three different substances, and so if this forbidden wine falls into a bore of, I'm assuming wine, like reading it like Rashi has read, the Gemara until now. And then also, I think a small amount of water comes in too. Then we disregard the kosher wine, like the permitted wine, and the water, of which there is more, serves to nullify the yain nesech.
Great. And why is this a problem for Rav Dimi? I'm assuming this is a problem. Maybe I shouldn't assume that, but let's assume that for the moment. I'm not sure, because it is also like the end result is the same, that the yain nesech becomes batil, right? Good, except do you need the water?
Oh, well, okay. It sounds like it would only happen if you had the water, whereas from Rav Dimi's understanding of Rabbi Yochanan, the water is irrelevant. It happens even without the water.
Exactly. Yeah. So that seems to be a challenge to Rav Dimi at this point. Ravine comes in and he's like, nope, I got a different tradition from Rabbi Yochanan that contradicts this.
Right,
okay. You mind going on a little bit? That's
yeah. Ki ata Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so now another statement of Rabbi Yochanan from Eretz Yisrael, being brought to Bavel. Lo shanu ela shenafal kiton shamayim tchila, aval lo nafal sham kiton shamayim tchila, matzah min et mino v'nei or. Okay, so he is limiting what it sounds like he's limiting what Ravin said. We'll later see that not necessarily, but it sounds like he's limiting what Ravin said and saying that the order matters, that water had to fall in, before the yain nesech came in, because if the yain nesech went in, if the yain nesech came in and mixed in with the permitted wine, then it would be min b'mino eino batel. Like the forbidden wine would find the permitted wine, and it would make it all like into isur. It would awaken or arouse the permitted wine and make that into isur too. So the water has to be there first before the yain nesech gets poured in.
Exactly. So good.
Okay.
This good. I'm gonna jump us to the Rashi here in a second here. But yeah, no, this is exactly, he switches, which by the way, if you read the statement of Ravine, right, it's yain nesech shenafal avor v'nafal sham kiton shel mayim, right? Sounds like the order is wine, water, and not the way that we alter the statement. Although maybe he reported it wrong or something like that, or he doesn't care about the order in that. Ruben, sorry, I see your hand.
Sorry, so are the last two opinion rejecting Rishon Batil and just like reverting back to like Batal b'shishim, or they're like kind of working it in? Like I'm kind of confused.
Good. Read the Rashi matzah min et mino.
Me?
Sorry, I would make Ruben read it. It's
matzah min et mino lebasav v'niur, kelomar nitchazek v'nitosef ha'isuro. ורבי יין על המים ולשון ניור כאיש אשר יער משנתו כמו הניור בלילה. Okay.
Yeah, Mishinato, but yeah, all right, good. But so I'm not going to worry how he gets Neor there as like what the language is so much at the moment. But yeah, it sounds like this is rejecting that of Rav Dimi. This is a problem. So a problem for Rav Dimi, not a problem for Ravine. And this gives us a whole sense of, right, this, and actually makes the Mishnah read in some ways much better, that it's, the Mishnah, you can read it back in the normal way at this point again. Good. Any thoughts or questions? I'll give people a minute to process all this. Hopefully I'm processing it right again, because it took me like 3 reads through it to get it.
So if I understand correctly, on one end, we have Rav Dimi and Rav Yitzchak that explains in Mishnah through the lens of Rishon Batil. And then afterwards, we have a different version where Rishon Batil does not even apply. And it's a new concept of Nior.
Yeah, we have this concept of Neir. So, yeah, so if you have the water fall in first, then the wine and the water interact, but otherwise it's the wine and the wine find each other, right? The min mino, matzat mino, and it wakes it up and it all becomes isur, and then the water doesn't matter anymore. So
is ni'ul the same as chanan but for liquids?
That's a great question. I saw this in some Rishonim, but I'm not going to answer that for the moment because I'm not holding it well enough right now. It's so.
But this is sort of going against the idea of Rava, right? That you can't look at it as though it's not there.
Yeah, or you can
Only
only
in
do
one circumstance.
exactly only in if the order is of such, right? But right, and Alani put it really well. Kiton Shomayim is not a lot of water. We're not talking about a lot of wine or a lot of water in this case, right? He's definitely holding on to like you drip a few drops of wine in there. That's Bimashu. It's Osir the whole thing, and which does sound like a Hanan kind of idea, and then the whole thing overwhelms the Kiton Shomayim. But if the water drops in first, then we can see only the water and Isser wine interaction and worry about that.
So can we advance that like the root of the machloket is really whether min b'mino is batal or not?
Yeah, in some ways, it's I mean, it's really a question of is kama batil, but kama batil means that in one direction at least min b'mino is not, but it is batil, right? And here he seems to say, right, no, min b'mino isn't batil. We can read the Mishnah just like yain nesech oser b'cholshu, like you drop yain nesech into a pit of water. That's oser, that's asur. Sorry, and but the only out you have is if you happen to have dropped water in there first. That's the only kind of way you could get away with it. So, but good. With that, now we have to we're gonna kind of maybe limit a little bit that statement. So let's see who I think Alice, I think, do you mind reading for us?
Yeah, sure, I can read.
I'm getting your name right. Let me just make sure I'm getting it correct.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're
Great.
Okay, where are we?
We've got Ika de Matnela Amanitim.
Okay. Wait, give me a minute. Okay. Ika de Matnela Amatnitin, Yain Beyain, Kol Shehu. Amar Shmuel Bar Yehuda.
Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are those who teach this teaching of Shmuel Bar Yehuda, who applied on the Mishnah with the ketone which fell into the barrel or into the bore. Was it? Who applied on the Mishnah?
As opposed to how are we applying it before?
As opposed to Ravin, right?
Great. Good.
So, Yain beyain kol shehu. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo shanu ela shelo nafal sham kiton shel mayim, aval nafal sham kiton shel mayim, roin et haeter keilu eno, והשאר מים רבים עליו ומבטלים אותו. Okay. So we are reading it back, right? Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So the teaching is Lo shanu ela shelo nafal sham kiton. So the whole case was that it fell first. That it just fell into the vine.
Well, is it the case, right? Sorry, I'm going to back you up. Lo shanu ela shelo nafal sham kiton. The case in the Mishnah, yain beyain b'kol shehu, is only when no water fell into it. Also.
Okay. Right. But if it fell there, so we apply this principle of roin.
Which, by the way, sounds like the order doesn't matter, and like where Rava is restored, right? Is that as long as there was a third substance or second substance in there, right? Then the whole min b'mino thing goes out the window a little bit. Right, which, by the way,
which seems, I think somebody implied it, that it seems that we really need min velomino, right? Like we need mint, not min bemino, but mint shelo bemino, in order to apply this principle.
Say it one more time. Sorry, I didn't.
Sorry, I just confused. No. So that we really can talk about this Rishon battle. It seems to me only if we talk about if we have this substance which is not mino. Like the question is, does it really work if we have only min b'mino?
Well, I think at this point we've moved out of the world of Rishon Batel, and we're in a new world now of the Mishnah being read just the normal way you would probably read the Mishnah if you first saw it, the first way we probably did. And now we're having a debate of, is this Oser b'mashahu can even happen when there's another substance in it, and it depends on the order, or does it happen even if only when there's not a second substance in it, right? And so therefore you read the Mishnah could be yain nesech asur ve'oser b'chol shu, as long as there's not that's only yain b'yain, but if there's some water in there, then it doesn't quite work, right? But which is the later in the Mishnah in some ways, right? We have mayim b'yain and yain b'mayim, and so what if you have yain b'yain umayim? And Rabbi Yochanan saying, or really Rav Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan saying, as in Rav Shmuel, Rav Shmuel is saying, in that case, we're looking at it as a min b'she'eno mino situation and not a min b'mino situation. But if you read it on Ravin, then it's about the order, right? This is what the Gemara ends up with this whole thing. I was kind of hoping to skip the end just from a time perspective, but I think the Gemara makes sense, a lot of sense there. So does that make sense to everybody? I'm pushing through this quickly because I want to get to the Tosfot. So I apologize for the bad pedagogy a little bit. But with that good reading, let's move on now to the Tosfot. So this, by the way, I will say the word neor is actually important here. The whole idea of choser v'neor is, I think, in some ways the opposite of kama batel, right? Choser v'neor is like that a substance comes back and is reawakened. Something that's batel is unbateled or whatever, I don't know, is a so like the idea, for instance, if you just think about this, let's forget the case of like a continuous drop or something like that. I drop some pork juice into, let's make it easy, I drop some chalev into soup, into very hot soup, but it's less than 1 in 60, and then I drop more chalev in there, right? Do I say, I don't have to worry about that first chalev because it was batel, and so the second chalev is batel now in the 60 soup plus the chalev actually, which is itself batel? Or do I say no, the two pieces of chalev find each other, and now I have 2 pieces of chalev to 60 parts of soup, and it's not batel, right? That's choser v'neor. That's the question. Yavni, please.
Wait, is that how we're imagining Ravina? Ravina is talking about a similar situation where the yain nesach is falling in a bit at a time, and then or is it just totally separate? Okay.
I think he's totally separate. I think he's a case of just any yain nesach falls in, right?
And then the neor is not the yain nesach is getting reawakened. It's somehow the yain, the like kosher yain is getting
kosher yain
into status.
Exactly. Kosher yain and the unkosher yain find each other. Sorry, I'm mixing languages. The kosher wine and the unkosher wine find each other, and now you've got a lot of unkosher wine. And that it doesn't matter how much water you drop in, right? As long as you drop the water in last, in that case of Ravin. So. Sorry, go ahead. Someone says something.
Just quickly to understand. So in the case of Ravin, right, even if there's 1 drop of non-kosher wine, it's still choser v'neor, which means like even if you have like a huge vat of kosher wine, 1 drop of non-kosher wine maybe is not batel, and therefore like they awaken each other, and it's never kosher in any case.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know we're in a hurry, but I just wonder, would it be the same if the situation was reversed? If we talked about mayim asurin and mayim mutarin, and then the drop of kosher wine, or is this just the specific stages of the non-kosher wine?
It sounds to me, that's a great question. I think it sounds to me that if it's non-kosher, if you have normal water, let's call it normal water, right?
Normal water,
water in a pit, right? And let's take this Rav Yitzchak version, it's gonna be Rav Shmuel version, and then you drop in a little bit of kosher wine, and then you drop in mayim nesech, right? Then the mayim nesech could be batel to the wine, right? But if you do it in the opposite order, then it could be problematic, right? That the wine, the two waters would find each other, it would all become mayim nesech, and then the wine is irrelevant at that point.
So it would be the same.
Potentially, yeah. So, but it's a great question, right? And this is gonna float over all of this, the whole question of oser b'mashahu that's coming up here. Does yain, the things that are mitnasech, are they particular because they're Avoda Zara things? And that's like we can't learn about chaylev from that, right? That's a whole different set of rules of batel, or do these rules apply across the board? So, and you can imagine a lot of people are going to say yain nesech is its own thing, and it's not. Nothing else is a comparable case necessarily. So, okay, good.
It's also worth mentioning that we almost don't have isurim that are liquid. Like it's hard to think about is a isuric category that is like you have dam of vetreif, but thinking about kama batil always puts you on a direction to think about Yinis or about Shabbat, but in a very weird way.
You could pour blood into things. You put dam, right? Dam is asur. It's not oser b'mashu, but it's asur, and and it, per Rebbe Yehuda, it would be oser b'mashu in dam, right? But of course, I know fish. The question would be, I don't think fish blood is the same mean as animal blood. Am I right about that? It's a different mean. So
we could imagine non-kosher milk and kosher milk, right? Camel milk and regular milk.
Yeah, if it's the same, again, if it's considered the same mean,
right?
So, question. All right, I'm gonna actually I want to just look, in interest of time, I'm gonna read the Tosfot, Kiata Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, if that's okay, and then maybe we'll take some I'll explain as I go and take some comments, because Kiata, and we'll see if I get everything right, because there's some sugyot in here that I have to see if I remember correctly. All right, Kiata Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hamere Yain Nesech Mechavit Lavor Afilo Kol Hayom Kulo Rishon Batel, right? So Rav Dimi reports that Rabbi Yochanan said that you can pour from a barrel to a pit, and the first drop by drop or maybe piece by piece of the column, cross section is batel. All right. So here's Tosfot. Pirush Afilo mitra beha yain nesech levasof. All right, that seems to be, even if at the end there's more yain nesech than there was mutar yain. Right, that sounds pretty shocking there. All right, mikoma koma minan rishon batel. Nonetheless, we still say rishon batel. All right, mashma hachi de Rav Dimi savar kama batel. Right, so it seems that Rav Dimi, right, he thinks that no matter what, kama batel. End of story. It doesn't matter what the final result is. But Vitema, this is shocking. The bechorot perakalokeach amrinan lokeach sir me am haaretz mashiko b'mayim v'tahor. All right, there's a case where you take brine for fish. I think it's fish brine here we're talking about, particularly from a Jew who we don't trust on Tara and Tuma very well, right? We think this is potentially tameh, and you touch it to water, and it becomes tahor, and we say mimanoshach iruva maya ninhu ha'avile hashaka v'iruba tsir lo bar kabuli tumahi. All right, and so if I'm not going to get too much into this case, but here's the perush. I think is perush umiut maya de itle batle de tsir hurov, right? Umasikale. Oh, what did I get here? It's a shared screen. Oh, I'm viewing someone else's screen. Oh, look at this. Alana, you like I said, oh, you have is this your breakdown? Did you do this? Oh, you accidentally shared your screen, but you happen to have broken down the Tosfot for us, so which is amazing. All right, and I lost my place. Iruva Maya Nihu Ha'avi lehashaka Viruva Tsir lo kabole taptumahi Pirush umiut Maya de itle batle de tsirhu rov. All right, umasikale. And so we conclude about this lo masikale lo shano ela litbol bahen pito avaliktera la. Right, this is only about if I'm gonna dip that I can make the tsir tahor with the water. If I'm dipping my pita in it to eat it, but dera, if I'm putting it in a pot to cook it, right? Lo the matzah minit mino v'neor, right? V'lo amar kama batil, right? And so that seems to be a case that goes against kama batil, because if I can only dip my pita in it, but if I can't pour this potentially tuma tsir into a soup, right? then you'd say, well, why not? Kama kama batil. That should apply in that case. All right, so that case seems to be out. Okay, and it seems to contradict us. But I mean, or velo amar kama kama batil. V'Rav Dimi kamarla lahashmata hatam. And if you actually look in that case there, it's Rav Dimi. It says Rav Dimi taught that teaching about the brine. Right, he taught that if you can't pour it in the kedera, it's only about dipping your pita into it, and therefore he seems to Rav Dimi in that case seems to not hold kama batil. That's challenge one. Ve'od kasha, second problem. The Rabbi Yochanan, the Mishma'itin amar Rabbi Yochanan Rishon batel. That here Rabbi Yochanan, at least according to Rabbi Dimi, says Rishon batel. Uvenedarim amar Rabbi Yochanan. So in Nedarim, this is a case, if I remember correctly, where you have you have a case where you took maaser from like an onion, right? It's no longer tevel. You then plant the onion, and now it grows, right? But that growth is a new growth. It needs itself to have maaser taken from it. Okay, if I'm getting this correctly. All right. And he says, gidulan shel truma. I think shigadluv rabu gidulav ali karo. Could be truma, same case, right? And asur afilu lekohen lochla mishum tevel. Right? This is, wait a second. If I have an onion that was, we piled the onions up, it was a nice pile. Then we took out the truma, we took out the maser, it's no longer tevel. I plant the onion, it's now a new growth. And now it would need, that new growth we're told needs to have truma and maser taken out of it. But wait a second, that new growth, each piece of the growth is batel to the onion. Right? Why don't we say kama kama batil? It's a very confusing case. It took me forever to figure this out. So maybe you guys are smarter and you figured it out immediately when you saw the sugya. But right, these are two cases where kama kama batil, one in the name of Rav Dimi, one in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that seem to not say kama kama batil. And so Tosfot has a problem with that. So they need to answer these questions. So here we go. V'yesh lomar. V'yesh lomar, the first widest lines in the Tosfot. V'yesh lomar de b'shma itin nami dekamar rishon rishon batil. Hainu ad shibol sham kol kach min hayayin nesech bein hakol shelo yeh beheter shishim, right? So it's only the case in our case is when we say rishon rishon batil is when there's is as long as there's not a 60 to or less than 60 to 1 ratio of yayin mutar to yayin nesech, right? But once we get above the 1:60 ratio, then we get rid of this principle. So in other words, right, kama kama batil, right? It's not oser b'mashuhu, right? In that case, but it is oser b'shishim. But Aaron, yes, please.
Just going back to what Rav Nachum said maybe an hour ago, but it seems like you could resolve that kasha by, or at least the first kasha by saying Rav Dimi is only talking about min b'mino, and the second kasha by saying he's only talking about liquids. Like, it doesn't actually seems like Tosfot wants to get a particular result, but these are not necessarily a great kasha.
I think they do want a particular result here. I think they want a particular result of understanding that min b'mino and min b'she'eno mino are all 1:60, right? They're consistent, and right, the kama kama batil is only applies in this limited case, right? That works within the 1:60. So good. Did I see another hand? Is that okay? I'm going to keep going a little bit, and then we'll take some final stuff here. Aval, a second line, wide line in the Tosfot. Aval nafal kol kach mina nesech l'sirugin bein hakol she'ein be'ater shishim k'dei levatlo asur mishum dematzah minit mino v'neor. Right? He says, but even if it falls in parts, right? If you find so much of yain nesech ends up in there in the end that it's no longer 60 to 1. Right, in order to have bitul, then the mean finds its mino and it wakes it up, and so in other words, the whole thing is asur, and presumably the whole thing is like we're back into the kind of the ravine case. It's not only just asur; it's like oser everything else, right? It's if you drop other stuff into it, it would oser that as well as with all the wine and not just some of it. Okay, v'teda shekenu. Right, and though this is right, what if you don't say this? Adam right? Right, this is where Tosfot is just like, this doesn't fit the smell test in some ways, right? Like, can I say that I just like, I'm pouring chalev into soup all day And like, it doesn't matter. It was like kama kama batil. It doesn't matter how much chaylev there's. I taste the chaylev. This is so yummy. I've never gotten to taste this in my life, but it doesn't matter. Kama kama batil, right? There's no way you can say that. Which is Tosfot is. This is not even appeal to the logic. It's kind of an appeal to like, come on, I don't even know what that argument is called. It's the like, which we're going to see some of this, where it actually does go the other way. At least I think so.
It's called begging the question.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It is circular in that sense. So we're going to see this in the other way. I have this feeling in Rechalav Miltahi when we get to that of like, really, the thing smells like non-kosher food, and you're going to tell me it's kosher, but I don't know. That's my take on that. We'll get to that topic later in the year. Okay. Ve'im tomar kevan de'ad shishim kamar k'dirishit im ken machidushu ze leshminun shia batel ad shishim. So it's like, but wait a second, we have a problem. If we're going to explain, right, this whole thing of a Rav Dimi that way, so what did he teach us? Right, that it's there's we know this bittul v'shishim. All right, what's the big deal? So what is it? It's to teach us that the Mishnah was only talking about the case where is actually all the cases in the Mishnah are, and now I'm going to get the order wrong, is not talking about pouring an isur into a heter, but rather a heter into an isur, and that's when it's b'mashahu. And that's the whole thing that Rav Dimi came to teach us. All right. Okay. V'im, how are we doing on time? Yeah. V'im tomar ulafi Rashi the piresh kama batil afilu imbo shishim. Right. So and if you say that according to Rashi, which he seems to say that kama batil even applies when there's not 60, right? Ha asrinan b'matnitin yain nesech shenafal labor. Right, that we in our Mishnah, which is not this Mishnah, it's the next Mishnah. If you actually look at it in Ayin Dal Alma Aleph, it actually says it explicitly. Right, it's the second Mishnah on that page. You can turn to it. Yain nesech shenafal lavor kulo asur. Right, that doesn't work. That sounds like isura into heter, and that we know it's a surah into hetera, and that's not batil. And where was I? No, I lost it. Here we go. So he says, no, that Mishnah, if you're Rashi and you don't think like we do, that up until 60 to 1, after 60 to 1, this doesn't apply, right? That Mishnah over there is when it like all comes in at once. And so we can't say kama batil. Aval hacha, in our case of, right, shenafal tipa achar tipa, mutar mishum de'amar kama batil. But here we're talking about when it's drop by drop, all right? And so he realizes, the Tosfot realized that Rashi doesn't seem to, or at least have the way they're understanding, a way you could understand Rashi, that there is no ratio issue here. Kama batil just universally applies. It doesn't apply when it all happens at once, right? Which actually Rashi seems to explicitly say anyway. So, okay, good. To summarize that, Tosfot seem to say that we think that this only kama batil only applies as long as you still can't taste the isur, or it's not enough that we would be able to taste it. They think that the Rashi may not think that, but even Rashi thinks that only applies then if you're dripping bit by bit. And that's it. And the whole thing was taught to us really just to teach us the order in which what's falling into what in the Mishnah, and not nothing else. So, okay, that's the takeaways. That's also Aaron, please. Aaron, maybe you didn't hear me.
Sorry, my computer's freezing. When Tosfos said it came to teach us the order, I understood that as saying the order for when it's just the mashahu.
Yeah. It's versus shishim. Sorry if I wasn't explicit on that. In other words, if you drop heter into isur, right, then that even b'mashahu, right, is oser. So there's a lot of heter into a little bit of isur is b'mashahu, but the other way around, kama batil, until you get to a 60 to 1 ratio, right? Which
seems to be the pshat of Rav Dimi's position, right? The idea that Rav Dimi's position is coming to teach a broader principle is something that the Stam introduces that is not intuitive.
Great. It could be. You're right. The idea that it's like it doesn't matter how much there is, that it's just this goes on forever. Potentially. I don't think the Tosfot's a crazy read. So good. Any other thoughts on this before? So did everybody follow the Tosfot okay, either on your own or when I read it? Okay. Anybody think I did? I also, if I said anything that didn't make sense or was wrong, please, this is a good chance to say it too. So to stop us saying about it, Devar Mutar should, it's a sur mutar, it's a sur that it's mutar, right? So okay. With that, let's see, we have 6 minutes. I think in 6 minutes we can quickly do one more little thing, if that's okay. 5 minutes now. Everybody turn to Ayin Gimel Amud Bet. And we're starting about like a little bit more than halfway in the page. I have 2 dots in my Gemara, but some editions may not. Ze'aklal min b'mino b'mashu shelo b'mino b'noten tam. I want to just read the beginning of that quickly, just so we see this. Maybe Yavni, can I have you read? Everyone give me a thumbs up when you find it first, actually, just make sure everyone has it. Great. So.
זה הכלל, מין במינו במשהו שלא במינו בנותן טעם. Or quote from the Mishnah. This is the general rule, a thing in the anyway, yeah, you know.
Yeah, we got it.
רב ושמואל דאמרי תרווי כל איסורין שבתורה במינן במשהו שלא במינן בנותן טעם. זה הכלל להטויי מאי, להטויי כל האיסורין שבתורה. So Rav and Shmuel both say that that זה הכלל means everything. All these איסורין שבתורה, this rule applies.
Great.
Sorry. רבי יוחנן בריש לקיש דאמרי תרווי כל איסורין שבתורה בין במינן בין שלא במינן ונותן טעם חוץ מתבל ויין נסך במינן במשהו ושלא במינן בנותן טעם. So Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, narrower, or I'll keep going. וזה הכלל להטויי תבל.
Good.
So they have a much narrower statement that all of these swing is that this statement, this general rule about all these in Torah is really just like yain nesech and tevel, but everything else is not like that. So it's really just to add tevel besides the yain nesech that is explicit in the Mishnah.
Great. And keep going a little bit, just do the Tanya Kavate. We can do it pretty quickly.
Tanya Kavate de Rav Shmuel, Tanya Kavate de Rabbi Yochanan, de Rabbi Yochanan Shlakish. Tanya Kavate de Rav Shmuel, de Rav Shmuel, Kol Yisurin Shebetorah. So we're bringing Baraitot to defend each of these positions. תניא קבעתי דרב ושמואל, כל איסורין שבתורה במינן במשהו שלא במינן ונותן טעם. So our first baraita is just says is a statement כל איסורין שבתורה in the same mean is batel and mashu, and in a different mean is in giving flavor.
Yeah, I would say not batel b'mashu, by the way, not even batel b'mashu, right? So it's oser b'mashu might be.
It's oser b'mashu. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Is never batel. So,
and do the next brayta. Tanya kavate de Rabbi Yochanan.
Tanya kavate de Rabbi Yochanan ve'Reish Lakish kol yisurin shebetorah ben b'minan ben shelo b'minan. בנותן טעם, חוץ מתבל ויין נסך במינן במשהו, שלא במינן בנותן טעם. So we have a braita that explicitly says all the Yisurin Torah, whether or not it's in the same mean, is oser, assuming that it gives flavor, except for tevel and yain nesech, in which case, if it's in the same type, then it's oser in any amount, and if it's in a different type, then it's oser by flavor. Mishum chumra de avodat kochavim, because we're especially stringent
Oh,
about.
yeah, you skipped.
What did I skip?
Yeah. Bishlama. Start with the Bishlama.
בישלמה יין נסך משום חומרה דעבודת כוכבים, אלא תבל, מה איתם דהתירו כך?
I think it's my
מה
tama.
איתמה?
Kehitiro kach isuro.
כהיתרו כך איסורו. So fine. So we have an explanation for why we would be so strict about yain nesech, because we're strict about things that have to do with Avoda Zara. But Tevel, what's the reason? Because just like we permit for it, so too do we forbid for it. Amar Shmuel, chita achat poteret et hakeri. Nami hachi b'ma.
It should be Utnan Namihachi, because this is actually a Mishnah. That's why that you have weird things in your Gemara there. So
yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
ותניא נמי הכי במה אמרו תבל אוסר בכלשהו במינו שלא במינו ונותן טעם. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the B'ma Amru, don't worry about that. The Mishnah continued from a previous piece there, right? The important thing is Tevel Oser B'Cholshu B'Mino Shlo B'Mino B'Noten Tam. This is proof of that thing, is that we have a specific Mishnah that says that. And the idea here, though, right, is Tevel, right? I pile up my grain. Once I remove one piece for the Kohen, I'm good. Right. That's it. So if it only takes one piece to make it mutar, it takes one piece to make it asur. That there should be this kind of parallelism between the isur and the heter going on there, which I found really interesting. Okay, I'm out of time. I do want to point, this is homework for everybody, because I think it's so important. There's a Tosfot there at Tevel Maitama de Kehetiro Kachi Suro. And that Tosfot there actually brings a second reason that's given as to why Tevel would be Asur b'Mashu, right? It's a very important concept that we're going to see. And so I want everyone to go look at that for their homework. It's a concept called Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, and some of the limits on it. That Tosfot's very important for teaching that. But I didn't get to it, and that's my fault. But Yesher Koach to everybody. Thank you all. And Shana Tova.
Everyone.
Very, very complicated and interesting year.
Shana Tova, everyone.
When is the next year? So after the Chagim?
The next year we'll announce, but it'll be after Sukkot, and it'll be, well, here's the big, we were debating what to do, which siman, but we'll start with Tarovot, which is Sadi Chet.
I thought you were going to switch it up on us this year, Rav.
I was going to switch it up, but I decided not to. We're going to start with Hilchot Tarovot, and then go backwards and do Hilchot Basar B'Chalav. Because the truth is, those sugyas in Sadi Chet and Sadi Tet are really very similar to the Gemaras that we've just done now. So we'll see some, connection to what we've been doing better that way. Anyway, that's the way we always did it. And I think in this, whatever. I thought, in the end, I decided to continue doing what we always did. So anyway, so that'll be our next topic, Yeridea. And interesting, he starts off by saying, Amar Rav Yochanan, closer into the Torah,
B'Shishim.
Yeah. And that's the problem is the exact quotation there that you'll see in the tour is not anywhere found in Shas, but it's very similar to what we just saw now, which is Rabbi Yochanan saying. Okay, have a good Chatima Tova, good year, good year of learning, and we'll see you soon after Sukkot.
Next year. Yeah.
Next year. It'll be already next year. We'll be a little bit older. Okay. Laila
Bye,
Tov.
everyone.
Okay, later, Shana Tova.
Yesher Koach, everyone.